Hello everybody. Now, I know a lot of people here on the channel have been asking for a few other manga series to take a look at, so with all of the talks about the new Dororo manga coming over here to the States, I thought it would be appropriate to take a look at the original 1967 manga. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So Dororo is a manga that was written and illustrated by Osamu Tezuka and was published in Weekly Shonen Sundays in 1967 until 1968, until its unfortunate cancellation. Now, there was a 26 anime episode series that was made for this manga, and it is pretty much a fully fleshed out story. Of course, with the original envision that Tezuka wanted to actually complete the manga, he ended up completing the story via anime. But for now, I'm actually just going to take a look at the manga, kind of tell you what I liked about the series, give a little bit of an analysis and a review, and maybe a recommendation to see if maybe this is something that's your cup of tea. So let's go ahead and get into the plot of Dororo. Now, for a story of this time period, Dororo definitely has sort of a more darker themed story. While it still has that cartoony aspect that a lot of Tezuka's series have during the time period, it definitely has a few more adult themes. So the plot of Dororo pretty much revolves around our main protagonist, Hyakimaru, who is a wandering samurai who is on a quest to recover what was stolen from him. Now, at birth, or I should say before his birth, his father, Daigo, who is a lord of Japan, ends up making a deal with 48 different devils that are present in the land. And as a form of payment, his wish is to become the greatest ruler in all of Japan. And so, as a form of payment, he sacrifices 48 parts of his own son's body before he's even born. And eventually what happens is that, well, he's born, but he's born crippled. He's born without any arms, no legs, no nose, no ears, no eyes, nothing that he can use for his own body. He ends up being sacrificed in a way to where he just really isn't even wanted in the family. And so Daigo makes it an order for his mother to send him down a river in a basket in hopes that either someone picks him up or that he dies off. But anyways, he ends up being pretty much brought into the contact of what is known as the doctor of the story, in a sense. He pretty much takes him under his wing, gives him a name, builds him a body, and trains him to be a swordsman. Now, eventually, what is later revealed in the story is that Hyakimaru has very different spiritual powers that he's able to utilize for his own sake. And so he ends up realizing that he definitely is human, but he needs to also recover his body parts. So the manga ends up taking a pretty drastic turn, but he ends up figuring out what he has to do. And that is, of course, recovering the 48 body parts that he had lost. Now, you're probably wondering where the name Dororo comes into all of this. Well, in fact, we do meet a character in this manga who's named Dororo, who is actually a thief that Hyakimaru comes into contact with in a few chapters of the story. Essentially, when they meet up, they end up kind of tag teaming together in a quest to find the different 48 body parts that Hyakimaru is missing. So, with that all being said, Dororo is sort of an interesting character. It sort of is a break in all the action and sort of almost like a comic relief sidekick character. I think with what Tezuka was trying to do was to sort of push a relationship between these two characters, as it definitely shows with how the way the impact of the anime, and not only that, but overall with the story as well. Now, I do like these two characters, and as much as I'd like to say, I want to keep this spoiler free, so I'm going to just keep it to that as the plot point. The story effectively just revolves around sort of like a monster of the week type storytelling, where there's definitely overbranching stories and sort of different episodic formats for how the different demon slaying works out, if that makes any sense. And I really actually enjoyed that style of storytelling, as a lot of with Tezuka's stories during this time period, he definitely had that episodic style to it, which I think is also why this worked a little bit better as an anime than it did a manga. So, with that all being said, what did I like about the series? Well, Dororo has a few really interesting draws to it. Effectively, with what the manga does and what it offers is that it's one of the few sort of samurai stories that Tezuka was a part of, and that was also very interesting. Second, the hook. Alright, so you have a guy whose quest is to recover 48 different body parts. That is awesome. I mean, as silly as it sounds, it really makes it for a very interesting story. And overall, I definitely think that it probably carries a majority of what the manga has to say. and in my opinion is personally probably what I would go to if you are looking for a series such as this. Probably my last, but my third reason as to why I like the story is the art style. Tezuka knocks it out of the park with this one. I definitely think that he had more of a refined style with this one. As I said before, his past stories definitely had a little bit more of a cartoonish art style to it. He definitely had his influences and where it was. And here you'll see that there are definitely a few more original characters here. Tezuka likes to recycle a lot of his assets, and he likes to recycle a lot of his past character designs. So you end up kind of seeing a lot of those characters being used in other stories, but not the exact same character, obviously, but with different sort of plot points to it, if that makes any sense. And it's one of the things I really like about Tezuka's stories is that it makes it feel very familiar while also still having a different sort of storytelling to it. And overall, I would say it was pretty good. Right, so what didn't I like about this particular manga? Well, unfortunately, because it was canceled, we were left with a rather ambiguous ending. It wraps it up decently for the most part, but because it was canceled, we didn't fully get to flesh out a lot of the characters. And so when it gets to volume 3, which it was 3 volumes here in America, 4 in Japan, when you get to the third volume on this one, it really is left very underwhelming because a lot of the characters and their character arcs weren't fully fleshed out. And in fact, by the time you get to volume 3, you start to get the development of a lot of these key characters. You start to hear their backstories, more chapters with them training and doing different things, and that is when they fully get fleshed out. But even after that, it's short-lived and eventually just gets wrapped up relatively quickly. Now, in all honesty, I would probably have to say that's my big reason. And the second, and probably my final one, is that the pacing is a little bit slow in certain parts. You can tell that Tezuka was sort of kind of pushed for ideas because it was a weekly shonen series. He wasn't really sure how he wanted to actually create certain monsters. You can definitely tell that there is definitely more quality in certain chapters than there are in others. A lot of creative freedom here, especially with some of the demons. And then you have some that are just kind of lazily thrown in there. Like, there's a shark demon with, like, an eyeball, like an extra eye. Like, that's kind of lazy. And then there are other chapters later on where there's, like, really cool lizard onis that flop around and transform into random human. It's crazy. I'm telling you. It's kind of crazy when it gets into that sort of territory. And in all honesty, if that was probably my major gripe with the series, that's probably it. Overall, I would have to say I really thoroughly enjoyed my experience with Dororo, and I would recommend it to anyone who's into Osamu Tezuka's works. Especially if you're looking to get into a Tezuka work, this one is super readily available. As I stated in a few other collection videos prior, you can get this series from Vertical. It is in an all-in-one omnibus edition that is currently still in print. If that's not your cup of tea, it might be a little hard to find, but there were 3 individual volumes that were released also by Vertical, but are unfortunately out of print. Now, I think before I end this off, too, I'd like to talk about the 2019 anime adaptation, as there, in fact, is going to be a new manga that is going to be released for this series come July here in North America. So, I would highly recommend that if you guys are looking to get into an interesting and very engaging story about a guy who just wants to become whole again, I would definitely recommend that you check out Dororo. Anyways, guys, I'll give a final rating for this manga. I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's definitely one of my favorite Tezuka works, and I highly recommend that you guys check this out if you're looking for a solid shonen. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.